Hello everyone, Smiler here. Welcome to Shudder Sundays. And we have DeadStream today to review, which came out last year in October. And a non-spoiler section real quick. I'll explain why I picked this movie, because we're halfway to Halloween. Another 6 months and it'll be Halloween. And this movie is I'm pretty sure it's set on Halloween, but it's set in October, okay? It's set in October. It's about this social media influencer who goes to a haunted house to win back followers because he's been in some controversy, like he's a Logan Paul, Jake Paul type character, like 2018 type character, constantly promoting his merchandise and doing shit that he probably shouldn't be doing, causing a lot of controversy, causing a lot of problems for people, but losing sponsors and shit. And he's trying to win everyone back by doing this spending a night in a haunted mansion type deal, but he gets more than he bargained for. I'd give this movie a 7 out of 10, mainly because it's about 87 minutes long, and basically the actor who's also one of the directors, Joseph Winter, him and his wife, Vanessa Winter, directed this movie, and it's done it's low budget, so it's so that sometimes the effects are a little bit like, you can tell they're not actually a monster. You can tell it's a rubber thing, but if you can look past it, it's fine. Good film. It's decent film. 7 out of 10 in my opinion. And yeah, Joseph Winter puts in a decent, although overly hammy performance, but it is a horror comedy about a guy who's a YouTube influencer gone into a live streaming his time in a haunted mansion. So yeah, that's non-spoiler over. Oh yeah, also there's a lot of horror references, especially for a guy who says he doesn't know horror, but whatever. I mean, it's obviously made by people who love horror, so they're gonna sneak in references when they can. Like there's even an Army of Darkness reference, which I will mention in the spoilers bit. But yeah, as I said, spoilers are now over. So the movie, we get introduced to our character. His name is Sean Ruddy. He's like Logan Paul, like I said earlier. He goes and does shit that he probably shouldn't do. Like, I don't need to mention the incident, but all I need to say is about January 2018, in Japan, in the suicide forest. From what is said, he hasn't done anything that severe. Like, it's like he beat up a homeless man for a video. He paid the homeless man. The homeless man signed the waiver, which he mentions later in the film. He sneaks across the US border in the back of a car. We get some clips. Like, he has the Baby Moses challenge where he goes down a river in like a little thing. It's like supposed to be a basket. But yeah, basically he's been up to a lot of dumb shit, got a lot of flack for it. So he is now announcing that he is going to be doing this live stream event for October, where he's going to be spending the night in a haunted mansion. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really sound all that great. Obviously he's selling it, because he's a YouTuber. He has to sell to people that what he's doing is actually a good idea and will be entertaining. But yeah, they also make fun of YouTubers and influencers in that situation. It's pretty funny actually, because he says, "Oh, I care about you guys," and then it just leaves like a bunch of, like, the rest of the screen is just like merchandise, like different t-shirts that he's got, and he leaves like one cube that's like this much of his face in the middle of the screen, which is pretty good. I like that bit. It's unfortunately too real. But yeah, so after he's had his little intro being like, "Oh, I'm sorry I fucked up, I'm gonna go and do this," because he's got his sponsors back and he spent some time off the internet and he's already done his apology, so whatever, dude. He goes on to the mansion and he basically decides to throw his spark plugs away. Yeah, he says he's protecting himself from himself, but actually he's fucking himself over for what's to come later. So he chucks his spark plugs away, breaks into the house after setting up a camera outside because he saw some spooky shit, and then he sets the camera up outside, breaks in with a crowbar, leaves the crowbar beside the door, and then he locks himself in because he has a key somehow, and then he puts it under a grate saying that he's protecting himself again, which obviously he's not. He's only fucking himself over even more. But yeah, he spends quite a bit of time wandering about the place, making random comments. As I mentioned earlier, he said that he doesn't know horror very much. Like the last scary thing that he watched was Ghost Dad. He said this at the beginning of the movie. It was which is a comedy from the 90s about Bill Cosby as a ghost dad, obviously, as the title says. I haven't watched that movie. I just looked it up. I'd never heard of that movie before this movie. But yeah. So, he's setting up cameras. He starts telling us the story of the house, which it belonged to this woman called Mildred in like the 1800s. And basically, she wasn't very well liked by the community. They thought she was weird. They thought that her poetry was weird. Like, it's weird that she wanted to do poetry and all this shit. And like the more lore bits is just basically like him speculating on things that he's heard. But yeah, basically Mildred killed herself in the house, and basically the idea is that her ghost entices people to kill themselves and join her ghost family that she never could have had in life because she had a lover who killed himself. Well, died. He didn't kill himself. He died suddenly before she was meant to move after they had 2 years of back and forth love letters. And she killed herself the day before she was supposed to move to Boston to be with him. But that's just the lore that it gives us throughout the film. Obviously, it's not 100% possibly it according to the story, because he does suspect that she's trying to build a ghost family. But that's not the case. She's just trying to get followers, people who like her poetry, kind of like how he's trying to get followers for his YouTube channel and all that stuff. But he doesn't figure that out until way later into the movie. But yeah, he explains about this ghost called the Corner Man, who is just a ghost that this guy kept having dreams about in 1910. He dreams about him, saying about how the pond water is still, which Sean doesn't know it yet, is actually a line from one of Mildred's poems. And he does figure it out later. The music for this movie is actually pretty good. I like it. I forgot to mention that. It's also done by Joseph Winter. But yeah. He literally gets into the house. He says a swear word. He's like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Don't take away my monetization. And then he immediately shows blood and used needles. And he gets to keep his monetization, I assume. Even though he probably shouldn't, but I don't really care. Not bothering me. Just something that probably would result in him losing his monetization if this was real. But yeah, he sets cameras up around the house. He starts telling about certain things, like for example in the nursery, about 3 babies had died and 2 kids had died over the years, and he goes on about certain deaths and things that have happened in the house. He even finds a broken window in the nursery, which we'll get back to that later. But yeah, he shows some footage from 1998. He shows some background stuff that other people have done ghost hunting. Like in 1995, there's this picture of a ghost that's in the hallway that he shows to them. That's just standing there. And then in 1998, there's footage of a bunch of paranormal investigators in the house with a child, and the child says that somebody told her to go to her room, which is at the end of the hall. But yeah, that's the end of that tape, and he disapproves of the use of kids in searching for ghosts. He even mentions how there's worse depths that he can fall into than he has. You know, for example, using children, which he hasn't, thankfully. Also, probably against YouTube regulations now. I'm pretty sure, you know, COPPA and all that. But yeah, what part am I at? He finds Kurt's bathtub, which is filled with murky blackish water. But it looks like the bathtub from RE7, where you get like the puzzle piece that you have to use in the light to create a shadow. It looks just like that, where it's just murky and disgusting. But yeah, the movie does explain quite a lot to do with like his camera setup. For example, he has this thing on his wrist that can switch depending on the way he flicks his hand between the body cam and like the face cam and the cam that's like up here. So, you know, you get his POV and then you can see his face from time to time when things happen. And he also has a tablet which allows him to switch between cameras and show stuff. And this is like what you get to see. It's like you're watching a live stream as well, but you don't get to comment on like the people in the movie, because he looks at the comments quite a lot. For example, they try to help him out from time to time. But yeah, after he goes around the house and he explains that there's this one room where there has not been any reported ghost activity, which is where he sets up his main base, and he you know, he sits there. Oh yeah, I also forgot to mention, he also plays a 2002 recording with a EVP, which is electronic voice phenomenon, as it's known. That's basically like where they set up a certain recorder that plays through like electronic frequencies, and you know, they try to see if they can pick up like voices that we can't hear through like electric fields. And what they believe can be heard is mama and pond water. There's that thing about pond water again. So yeah, very important. But then this is the part, I've already explained all the Mildred lore, but this is the part where he mentions about how she's lived here for 8 years, and then she, like, you know, she spent 8 years in the house writing poetry about romance that she never had, and then she met a guy called Lars Jorgensen, who she fell in love with, and they wrote love letters back and forth for 2 years. But yeah, he ends up going into the closet in his safe room, and that's where he finds a protective seal. He doesn't know it's a protective seal. It's actually called a Hamsa, if I remember right. If I remember correctly in my notes, it's called a Hamsa, which is explained later. It's in a lot of religions. It's like a hand of protection, like type symbol. It's a hand symbol that means like protection from like demonic spirits and shit across like many religions. I do not know fully, so I am only going with what the movie says. I don't know fully 100% if it's across many religions. It just says in the movie that, you know, many religions used it, and it's explained by a 12-year-old later. So that it probably is true. I don't know. But, you know, it's an explanation as to why there hasn't been much ghost shit going on. He breaks it because he doesn't like the look of it. He thinks it's freaky. He thinks it's devil worship, which, you know, in that thought, he has fucked himself over royally. And then, so that's when he mentions about the ghost family. He goes, he ends up doing some product placement with a drink, you know, trying to keep his sponsors happy. And then, but she also accidentally talks shit about the product, which, you know, that's gonna look good for you, Sean. But I have a friend who's probably watching this, and he's probably thinking I'm talking to him whenever I say the name. It's spelled SHAWN. So anyway, after that, he ends up coming up. He has this wheel of stuff. He shows some stuff that he brings with him in the video, like in the video at the beginning. Like he has a ghost hunting kit which has like holy water. It has holy water, garlic, a knife, and some salt. I believe, if I remember correct. But yeah, basically he just he has a little kit that he brings with him, and it's funny because you know garlic doesn't work on ghosts. That's vampires. But yeah, Sean explains he doesn't know shit about ghosts and all that. So you know, honest mistake. Also horror comedy. So he tries to summon a ghost after spinning the wheel and getting seance, and he tries to summon a ghost with a clown toy that he found in the nursery. He ends up hearing a loud thud on the roof. He runs to this cupboard that he hides in. He gets told to obviously go check it out by the comments. He freaks out. He decides to go to it, and then he gets jumped scared by a girl called Chrissy, who, if you couldn't tell by the ghost stuff, don't worry, I'll say it later. But basically, Chrissy appears. There's like 400 million views. And she tells him to, like, they explore the house together after everyone decides that they want her to stay so that Sean isn't alone. And he's also apparently broken up with his girlfriend. Everyone knew he had. So, you know, they're probably trying to get him together with Chrissy, who says she's a fan. She even gives him a username, which I'm pretty sure is like ChrissyCat94. Yeah, I think that's it. But he doesn't do anything smart like check if she actually did leave comments on his videos. You know, he doesn't pull out his phone and be like, pull up YouTube dashboard and it's like, oh, you said this on my video. Or actually, no, there's no comments from you here. The fuck are you talking about? If you notice why I said that, don't worry. If you didn't, I'll explain in a minute. But basically, they find a secret room, and they find a bunch of stuff that belonged to Mildred, including a book of poems, and that's where he stumbles upon that the pond water stands still. And but yeah, after the poem thing, he does say that the poems aren't that great, and she's like, shut up, be quiet, let's go, we need to leave. So they leave, and then, you know, that's foreshadowing for you. But they leave. Chrissy says that they should do something ghosty. So he brings out the wheel again. It lands on Seance and EVP recorder. So they have to, he says to only do one, but she says to do both. There's a reason that they've got to do both. So he sets up the EVP recorder and he brings out no, it's not Seance, it's a spirit board. But yeah, he brings out a spirit board, and on the spirit board it says Klaatu Barata Nikto, which is the Army of Darkness reference that I was talking about, because that's the words that Ash has to say before he picks up the Necronomicon in that movie. But yeah, there's just little references like that. For example, he calls himself he brings his own little tape player, and he plays music that he's made beforehand, and he calls it he calls it Sean Carpenter's Halloween. You know, obviously this, if you didn't get it. But anyway, he ends up saying that the poems suck again, and she tells him they don't suck. More foreshadowing. If you don't get it, don't worry, I'll explain in a moment. But you really should. But sorry if that sounds condescending, but it's kind of an obvious twist. But she ends up telling him to say these words that are actually Latin, which mean if I remember right. Hold on. I wrote it down somewhere. Basically, what it says is you basically forfeit your soul and your will to that person that you're saying it to. So yeah, Chrissy is Mildred, but it takes Sean a little while to figure it out. She starts to act weird after she tricks him into selling his soul, and she tries to bite him on the neck after she disappears and comes back. And Sean's like, "Where the fuck did you go? How do you know where to go? What's going on?" And she just pounces on him, tries to bite into his neck. He ends up stabbing her in the neck with some wood, and given her history, supposedly, I guess that's the most contact she's had with a man, especially involving wood of any kind. But yeah. Anyway, he freaks out, thinking that he's killed Chrissy because he stabbed her through the throat with a fucking wooden pole. Bit of like wood that's sharp. He managed to stick it through her neck, and he runs back to his little safe room, and he tries to he tries to like, "Get the cops! I'm gonna turn myself in. Please help! I'm in trouble." And as soon as he gets back out there, Chrissy is gone. Just a little blood pool on the floor. So, yeah, it's not a ghost. It's not really a ghost. It's a fucking... She fucked the devil or some shit, and now she's like able to bring herself into physical form if that charm isn't there. She didn't actually fuck the devil. She just like spoke to the devil and sold her soul. But might as well have. But yeah, she more like basically he gets scared. He runs back into the cupboard. That's when a kid sends him a video explaining the Hamsa, which he realizes, "I've fucked myself over. Great." So he gets attacked by Mildred after he's convinced to leave, and she ends up sticking a finger up his nose and leaving a fucking grotty ass fingernail up there. And I hate that shit so much that I remembered it, and I thought it happened more than once. It did happen more than once. What I meant to say is I thought it happened more than twice. It happens twice. I thought it happened like 3-4 times, but no, it happens twice. But yeah. So he tries to run away, get out the front door, but he remembers, "Oh yeah, I threw the key under the grate." So then he tries to go under the grate and he finds the wrong key, which ends up actually being a key for the small box that he found earlier, which is when he realizes that Chrissy is Mildred, because they look pretty much the exact same, just different hairstyles. And he also finds Mildred's finger in there, and then he also encounters a ghost child, which has another child attached to it, which it's okay for the moment. It's not the best effect, but it works. It works. Yeah. So he ends up realizing that his soul has been, sold to Mildred, which the words meant, "Give thee my soul and I forfeit my soul." But yeah, that he always runs back to this fucking cupboard in the safe room, and that's where he actually gets to progress and realize how to beat Mildred. And he gets this video, "I forfeit my soul," and the dumb, it's this kid's mom who translated it from Latin, and then it goes to the kid, and the kid says one of the dumbest things I've ever heard, which, I mean, it's a kid, but it's still dumb as shit. Basically, the kid says that he thinks that the ghosts used to be alive like him, but they were tricked to say those words and then forced to kill themselves. Which, yeah, it's a good explanation, but also the whole thing about them being alive before, it's kind of implied by being a ghost. I shouldn't get into specifics, especially since it's a child explaining. But yeah, basically, he's the comments are like, maybe you're supposed to say sorry for the things that you've done, and he's like, why would I? And then he apologizes for all of the bad shit he's done, you know. And he says that he apologizes for apologizing and not meaning it. And then he says, fuck it, I don't want to apologize. And then people are like, oh, you're some fucking role model. And he's like, I don't want to be a role model. Which I think is fair. I think it's bullshit that if someone posts a video on YouTube and, you know, people, they start to get popular, and, you know, I think it's bullshit that they should be considered a role model and that they should act as a role model. I think that's fucking bullshit. That's stupid. That is incredibly fucking stupid. You know, not everyone who gets big or famous has to be a role model. I mean, yeah, they don't have to be a piece of shit, but they don't have to be a fucking goody two-shoes. It's just really stupid. But yeah, that's when they're like, oh, what about you putting that homeless guy in the hospital? And he's like, he signed a waiver. Did you know? Oh, he didn't. Like, I didn't think I could hurt him because he was bigger than me. But he ended up putting a homeless man in the hospital for a video by accident. And then yeah, that's when Mildred decides. They also bring up his racism. He's like, I'm not racist. And then Mildred pops up from between his legs, yells guilty, and bites him on the dick, which is probably the most dick she's ever gotten. But yeah, he immediately runs out the fucking cupboard and jumps out the broken window, and he falls on the floor from the second floor and breaks his leg. And then he fixes it kinda little bit, enough so that he can walk and run for a little bit. But yeah, he ends up cleaning it after breaking it, and he then goes to find the spark plugs that he threw into the woods, which is when he encounters a golem statue from Wish that scares him, and he stumbles into a police officer who's actually not a police officer. He's another fucking ghost. And that's revealed when he says, I don't like it when you hurt people, Sean. I don't like it when you hurt people, Sean. And gets like really threatening, tries to attack him, and then Sean kicks him in the balls and runs away to his he kicks him in the ghost balls, the ghoulies, if you wanna say, the nether regions. And then he runs back to his car, hides in there. Ghost cop starts to deteriorate and comes after him. And then he finds this tater gun that he had from a previous video. He takes one of his pieces of merchandise, puts it in his ammo. He starts freaking out, saying this is not how he imagined that he was gonna die, you know, blah blah blah. But this is where it's like really hammy and, you know, high pitched screaming. But yeah, so the cop tries to get in. That's when the comments also identify him as the same man from like 1910 that killed himself after getting dreams of the pond water thing. And then so then he gets a video from this old woman that used to live there when she was 15. She explains that Mildred kept coming after her, and she set up a little protective ward, which is the thing that he broke. And then she tries to explain like how to make another one, which means that you have to make the Hamza and then sacrifice a bit of flesh. But that's not actually it, because I'm pretty sure she didn't sacrifice flesh. She takes a while to explain, and he ends up skipping her. That's what I mean by the bits of comedy in it as well. And but yeah, he ends up finding this note about an unholy hand of power, which is what she used, and it looks kind of like this, where it's like you have to like draw a hand, but have it like that on the floor. But yeah, like this. I don't know why I was trying to do that, like I'm Spider-Man, like this. So then he realizes that actually Mildred didn't want This is after he's killed the cop, by the way. He shoots him through the chest with the piece of merchandise, like the bobblehead. Hits him right in the chest, and he slides down on it, on like the tube. You could tell it's a dummy. It's not terrible. It's not the worst piece of special effects I've ever seen. It's okay. You just know it's a dummy, okay? That's all. It's not as bad as like Nightmare on Elm Street Mom blow up doll from the ending. It's not that bad, but it's good. It's decent, alright? You know, low budget. You gotta do what you gotta do with a low budget. Can't give them too much shit. So he realizes that Mildred wants followers, so he tricks, you know, like she tries to get people to remember her poetry before they kill themselves, and that's like the whole thing about the pond water lying still. So he decides, let's copy strike her, because he's thinking about what hurts him, and he talks about a previous video that he did where a band copy strike, like, his video for, you know, singing one of their songs. And, yeah. So he goes back into the house saying, let's demonetize this bitch, which I would have probably said something like, let's de-demonize this bitch, something. It's okay. You know, it's just trying to fit in things that an influencer would say, you know, because influencers are pretty much all about the money and being monetized quite a lot of the time. But he breaks in again, he gets his holy water, he puts it in one of the used drug syringes, and then he gets garlic, and he tapes the knife to a stick, he puts the garlic on the end for a bit, and then he goes back into the house, and he's like, coming out, you bitch, I'm gonna fuck you up. You know, basically, you know, he's talking shit to her. And then he ends up seeing a ghost on the hallway cam, and he tries to stab it. He does stab it, but it doesn't do shit, because it just takes it back and stabs him in the leg with it. And he's like, garlic's bullshit, and runs back into his little safe room, which is where he decides to set up the ritual in the base, and then he makes an actual apology, saying that he's actually sorry for the things that he did, including, like, and he says that what he did was funny, but it was funny for the wrong reasons, and other things like that. He says that he's sorry to the minorities for the video where he went over the border in the back of a car, and then he says he dedicates the broadcast to the blacks and the Mexicans. His words, his wording. But yeah, he ends up reading the poems to summon the ghosts, and then he ends up name dropping PewDiePie, saying, Mildred, are you going to come out and fight me, or are you going to send your child army like PewDiePie? And then, you know, she does eventually come after him when he runs back into his little hidey hole, and it goes dark, and then he ends up in the bath full of like dirty water, and his eyes are glazed over white like he's a deadite from the first Evil Dead. And then he ends up eating an eyeball from the the bath. And then he says the pond water lies still, and then leans forward to drown into the bath, but no. He ends up battling between like him being possessed and him being not possessed, being like, whoa, fuck off, no, Mildred, I'm not doing this shit. I'm not going, I'm not gonna drown, I'm not gonna die, fuck you. But yeah, once he manages to fight off the possession, this rubber monster comes out of the water, and it's effective at first until he puts a shower curtain over it, and it's like really static and just like same face, like and then he takes the syringe full of holy water, jabs it in the fucking thing's eye, and there's like a big welt of like black blood coming out, which is pretty neat. And then he says, I may not be good at ghost hunting, but if any of the movies have taught me, holy water will fuck you up, and it explodes in his face, and he just shuts up. I like some of the comedy in this film, okay? Some of it's pretty good, especially his like reactions, like Joseph Winter. I was about to call him John Winter, I was actually probably going to call him John Winters because, you know, Resident Evil. I'm playing Resident Evil again, so, you know, Ethan Winters. I'm just going to mix up the surnames because they're very close, literally just one letter off. But, yeah. So he gets out the bath, and he encounters Mildred, and Mildred comes after him, and he makes this trap with his jeans. So then she ends up falling for it, seeing like the jeans on the ground, like looking like there's legs in them. But he pops out from around the corner with a chair, bashes over the back with the chair like it's fucking WWE, and then she goes down. He tapes her down, and then he starts saying the words, which he got his chat to decipher for him when he was in the car, when he was making his way back to the safe room, which is death becomes unholy with the power of my unholy hand. I use the power of my will, my words, my passion, my ambition, and my authority. That's the words that was on the unholy hand page. But he seems to have missed the part where there is the sacrifice of flesh, so it doesn't work. Mildred just laughs at him, breaks free, fucking punches him, and then he also puts the cleaver in her head. And he attaches a camera to her head too, calls it the Mildred cam, which is pretty nice. There's some good jokes with the camera stuff. For example, he put one on a beef stick, so he called it the beef cam when he was in the car trying to see about the police officer. But yeah, basically she comes after him. He falls down the stairs. She falls after him. Then he realizes, obviously, the sacrifice of flesh after she knocks him about for a bit. He takes the cleaver out of her head, cuts off his finger, and then she gets sucked into hell. Because it shows on her camera, like, her fucking, like, boom, like, fleeing back, like she's been grabbed by the Kandarian demon or some shit. And she flies into this little this little hole in the floor, you know, where the grate was. And there's just red lights, which is obviously supposed to be, like, her going to hell. It works. It's low budget, but it works. Okay, you get the point. What's going on? So, he has now bound the ghosts of the house to him. He now has her followers, but he's not entirely sure. He thinks he's won. She also waterboarded him with piss, by the way, during this entire, like, confrontation thing. Because he peed in a bucket. And then, so he seems to have won. And he's all like, thanks for watching, everyone. I'm Sean Ruddy. You know I always bring this best in cinematic entertainment online and all this sort of shit. And then that's when the ghosts start coming out. And, you know, he's like, oh, fuck. And the finger that he's just cut off now has Mildred's grotty ass rotten finger on it. Grotty fucking rotten green bone finger with long ass fingernail. It looks like it's been dipped in fucking vinegar for like maybe 2 years. And then the movie ends with him getting attacked by one of the monsters, and it just says DeadStream, and then the credits come up. I prefer this ending to say 4th of July. July? What the fuck? 4th of July from The Unheard, which I did last week. And next week, well, as I said, for this 7 out of 10, I would perhaps... I actually do like this movie. I think it's pretty entertaining. But obviously, like, the special effects and some of, like, the performance being really hammy can get a little bit annoying. But other than that, it's pretty decent. But for the most part, yeah, it was decent. It's probably one of my favorites that I've watched on Shudder, and I hope you enjoy this Shudder Sundays. Hopefully, next week I can actually get it out on time instead of leaving it until about 4 a.m. and, you know, making it. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed. You'll see whatever it is next week, because it will be out. Trust me. This is my little notebook, by the way, where I keep the notes for videos. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully see you all next time. And Smiler.